Hello, today we're looking at nets of cubes. So there's actually 11 different nets of cubes. So we'll look at the first 6. So as you can see from the visuals here, this is the first 6 nets of cubes. It's just good to memorize what they look like. So this rule is 1 on the side, 4 in the centre and 1 on the opposite side. Here we can see 1, 4, and this one's just moved down slightly. Again 1, 4, and this one's moved down again. 1, 4, and this one's moved down again. Here we have 1, 4, 1. And the ones this time are on the opposite sides. We've got 1, 4, 1. So that's all the first 6 cubes. They can be the opposite way around. So they can be shown on the opposite way around. They could be shown on the side. And sometimes they can be like the flip version. So difficult to see, but obviously we just sort of as though you'd see it from the back. So they can look slightly different to those, but that is the first 6, and it's quite easy to start memorizing those. Basically it's the 1, 4, 1 rule, and that's the easiest way to remember it. You do sometimes get these on your SAT tests, and they will be on the 11 plus exam as well. On the 11 plus exam, you tend to need to know which sides are opposite, and you'll have visuals to work out whether it's correct being on the opposite side as well. So obviously it's important to learn about opposite sides. On the SAT exams, it tends to be either net questions, or it could be a dice question as well. So in terms of opposite squares, it's something that once you've learned what the nets are, you should then learn obviously what the opposite pairs are. To try and help with this, I've coloured them yellow, orange and green. So on this configuration of nets, there are 3 opposite squares on every net. The opposite faces in these nets I've shown in the same colour. So here basically you have an orange, skip 1, orange, green, skip 1, green, and then the 2 ones on the outer side are the yellow. So when you actually make up your cube, they're the opposite sides. So what I've done is I photocopied this resource that I made, and I've cut some nets out to show you. So if you wanted to see it and to understand it, some children just need to see the nets and just memorize how they look. Other children can kind of visualize it from the nets being made up. So here we've got a net, and obviously we can visualize those 2 sides turning in, and we can see that on our cube we would have a yellow and a yellow, so they're opposite sides. I can now visualize this going around, so I can now see we've got red, green, red and green. So when I make that up to a net, which is a little bit tricky to do holding the phone at the same time, we can see that it's yellow, yellow, red, red, green and green. So you can see how that forms up to a net. So you can basically just make your own nets, cut them out and sort of visualize that. So some children can visualize how the net would work in terms of making them together. So sometimes it's worth making the nets. I think personally it's much easier just learning the rules for the 11 nets, which is quite easy to do. So the first one is basically 1 4 1. When we translate the 1 4 1 into a dice, then first thing we know is that all opposite sides add up to 7. So here we can see 6 and 1 is 7, 5 and 2 is 7, 4 and 3 is 7. So what I've done on this dice is I've coloured orange, skip 1, orange, green, skip 1, green, and then the 2 ones at the side, I've coloured them yellow. So I know that if I got a question like this, I would know how to answer and draw the dots. So if I have 5 already on the test paper, I would draw 2 dots here. If I had 6 on the test paper, I would draw 1 dot here. If I had 4 on the test paper, I would draw 3 dots here. It works a similar principle in terms of visuals as well. So sometimes you'll have on the exam, you know, which shape should be on the opposite side to this one, and we'd know it should be, obviously we'd know the 2 oranges are the opposite sides, the 2 greens are the opposite sides, and the 2 yellows are opposite side. So it just kind of works the same way, but today we're showing it more on the SAT question, which is the Key Stage 2 SATS, which your children will do in May during their year 6. So it's definitely something to start learning. Certainly caught my child out in terms of their mock test on their SATS, and I think basically no child could answer this question. So it's something that you could cover. Certainly my child had on his 11+ exam, he got the net questions, so he just needed to learn the rules as in 1 4 1. Okay, so that's the first 6. So I'm going to show you the rules now for the next 3 types of nets. So we've got 11 in total. So here again you can learn a rule, and the rule is 3 in the center, so it's always 3 in the center here. We have 2 on this side and 1 on this side. So again, 3 in the center, 2 on this side and 1 on this side. 3 in the center, 2 here, 1 on the side. Again, they may be displayed this way around, this way around, this way around, and sometimes they kind of flip it so you'd see it this way around. But I think as long as you remember the rule, 3 in the middle, 2 one side and 1 the other side, it should cover, and it certainly covered my child in terms of his 11+ exam. So if we were trying to work out opposite sides on this one's slightly different and a little bit more tricky, I think. So on step 1, we would just know that this one is opposite to this. So it's green, skip 1, green. Green, skip 1, green. Green, skip 1, green. So basically the greens will be on the opposite side to each other. And obviously you can do that on a model of cube herself as well, so you can make that up to visualize that. So I've got a green, I would skip that one, and I've got a green, so I can see that the green and the green are on opposite sides of my cube. Right, the next step would be step 2. So the second pair of opposite squares is the 1 square here. So if we take the 1 square on each one, which I've done in yellow, and then it's the nearest square on the 2 squares. So the nearest square is this one. So I've got my 1 square, and the nearest square is this one yellow. 1 square, and the nearest square on the set of 2 is here. So on the set of 2, it's always my nearest square. So that's the easiest way to remember it. Again, you can make some little cubes up, and we can see that the yellow on its own here, if we make this cube up, which again is tricky to do when I'm holding the phone, we've got yellow and yellow here. And then we have red, red, and then the opposite sides is green and green, and that makes up to a cube. Sorry, when I photocopied it, it's made the orange look a little bit more red. To be fair, it looks a bit more red to me, but that is basically the same as where I've coloured it in orange. So you can make little cubes up, and obviously you can colour code them just to kind of get that in your head. So sometimes it's good to visualise it, but I think sometimes it's just knowing the rules as well. So on step 3, basically, I found it was easier remembering this as the middle square, middle square, middle square, and then the furthest away on the 2. So again, the furthest away on the 2 and the furthest away on the 2. So if you get to learn those rules, you could draw out them like I have and write it all up. My child found it useful to have like sheets on the kitchen cabinets, so every morning when he was having his breakfast he could take a quick look, and obviously every day looking at these just, I guess, builds up the understanding and knowledge. So when he come to his tests, it was extremely easy because he knew the answers. In terms of this one then, this translates to the question that my child got on his Key Stage 2 SAT exam. So they did a previous mock test at school, and this is the question that came up on that mock test, and I believe it's come up on a previous government test. Sometimes they just have the net itself. So this was the question, and this is how I answered the question. So basically, I looked at the cube at the top, and we know that each side adds up to 7. So I have 4 here, so I know the one at the bottom's got to be 3. I have 5 here, so the one I can't see behind here has got to be 2. I have 6 here, and 1 at this side makes 7. So all our sides now add up to 7. So what it's asking me to do is, on a dice, the sum of the dots on opposite faces is always 7. So it tells you the rule. Draw dots on 3 empty faces of the net so that it could fold up to make a dice. So we're going to use the rules that we used on the last page. So from our nets, we can see this follows 3 in the middle, 2 at the side and 1 at this side. Okay, so we know that this square, we do this square green, we skip 1, this square's green. Step 2 is yellow. So the 1 square is yellow and the closest one to that square on the opposite 2 side is also yellow. Step 3 in terms of the orange is the center of the 3 squares and the furthest away of the second squares. So now we know which are the opposite sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to now fill in the missing numbers. So on the question, you're given 2 here, you're given 6 here, and you're given 4 here. So the first one we'll do is step 1. So step 1 is here and here. Green, skip 1, green. So if we've got 4 on the test paper here, we're going to draw 3 here. Step 2 is the opposite squares, is a second pair, which is the 1 on its own and the closest one in the 2 to be here and here. So on the question we've got 6 drawn here, so I've drawn 1. The next one is the orange. So we know step 3, the last pair of opposite sides squares is the square in the middle of the 3 plus the furthest away square on the 2 squares. So the center one and the furthest away on the 2 squares. So if we've got 2 drawn here on our question, we need to draw 5 here. And that's how you would answer the SAT question. To be honest, it was only worth 1 mark, and no children in my child's class could do it based on they hadn't been taught it at school. It's something you would need to know, particularly if you sit in your 11+ exam, in terms of net cubes, and that can come up on your SAT paper as well, and also as well about learning about opposite sides. They tend to do it with visuals instead of dice, but it's the same principle of the opposite sides. So that answers the SAT question. The only set of nets that are left to learn is these 2. And the rule basically is 2, 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3. So again, you might see them this way around, this way around, this way around, this way around, or you might even see them kind of from the back as well, if that makes sense in terms of being flipped. So if you're learning nets of cubes, certainly it's covered on quite a lot of tests. Again, you can make them out so that you could actually make up the cubes and learn, you know, the opposite sides. So we can start to see that red and red, yellow and yellow, and then your final side is the green, which is at the opposite side as well. So green and green. So the easiest way really to visualize it is to just make some up. Like I said, when I photocopied it, it actually went a little bit more red, but that's not a problem. So in terms of opposite sides here, I think you're just going to have to learn visually how they look. So here, diagonal to here, here, diagonal to here, here, diagonal to here. On the 3 by 3, we're going to go here, skip one here for the orange. The green would be here, skip one green. And then the 2 centres are the yellow. So they're the opposite sides. And it's just a case of learning them really. And like I say, draw them out, put information somewhere so that you can just recap it. Some children prefer things in folders, some prefer it visually out so that they don't forget about it and can have a look. But certainly it will help you in your SATS and 11 plus exams, hopefully. That's the final net that I've just made up. So it's green, green, yellow, yellow, and orangey red on that side. So enjoy, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.